I'm Susie Hess.
And I'm Yehuda Price. This is Our Stories Matter.
So I am really excited to have my good friend Norma Cumpian on today's podcast. So this is how we met. I think it was 10 years ago.
Yep, 10 years.
Oh my God. So 10 years ago, I saw a documentary called Sin by Silence of women who were changing policies inside around domestic violence. Because at that time, experiencing domestic violence was not a defense for any type of violence. So I saw that documentary and I was like, oh my God, these women are amazing. And then I was just like the crazy person who was just like following all the women virtually, just everyone knows, virtually. And Norma was about to be released. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. So then I found Norma on Facebook and I was like, hey, my name's Susie Hess. I teach at USC and I think you're amazing. Do you want to meet for lunch?
Was I home yet? Or did you, this is what I remember. I remember there was this weird thing called Facebook, which I thought then, and I kind of still think now is very weird. Why would you want people to see your messages? Like, I don't understand that. It was so bizarre. And so then my sister-in-law at the time said, oh, there's all of these messages for you. And then she was going through them. And I was like, there's that many people in the world that are going to do this thing? They're going to write to something like this is so bizarre. So that part. Okay, go ahead.
Wait, this is so funny. I didn't even know that. I thought you were home, but was your sister?
I was home, but I think you wrote before I came home.
Oh yeah. I think I was like, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember being at the program I was in and my sister-in-law coming with her computer and going, let's go through these. And I was like, what is wrong with this world? Weirdos. Yeah. And she was like, it's not weird. And I was like, it's bizarre. She was like, no, it's not. This is how the world is. This is called online. This is how people communicate. And I was like, oh my goodness, what about this one? And it was, you. She's like, she sounds legit. I think she's legit. And I was like, okay. And so then we met for coffee.
Yes. Well, I was super excited because you were living in Claremont where I went to school. So I love going to Claremont anyway. So I drove from LA to Claremont. I'm like, oh my God, let's meet for lunch, coffee. We went to Harvard Square, I think. Wasn't it like Harvard Square?
It was the Crust, right? The Crust Bakery.
Crust Bakery.
I forgot what it's called right now.
Some Crust Bakery.
Crust or something like that. Yeah.
And we also went to that Afghan restaurant. Forgot the name of it. We went to the Afghan restaurant and then we went to some Crust Bakery and then we walked around all the campuses. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I think she's super cool. I would totally be hanging out with her as friends. This is all strange. Should we be like presenting as like both experiencing domestic violence? One went to prison, one didn't. I mean, I was so close to maybe going to prison, but I didn't. Like, how does that happen? All of that, right? And then I was like, we presented together and then I just wanted to be friends. And I think I said to you, like, do you want to just be friends instead of like co-presenters? And you're like, yeah. Like 10 years later.
That was 10 years ago.
Wow.
When we were both, 15 or so?
Right.
That's what I was just about to say.
I know, right? Like, you guys could drive? Wow.
I was going to say they locked you up young, Norma. That's what I was going to say.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to say, Yehuda. That's right.
Yes. So that's our love story, which I love to this day. And I love retelling our story all the time because I've never met anyone like that before. Like it was random on my part, but I did think you were like an amazing badass. So Norma is the Associate Director of Women and Non-Binary Services at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. In 2019, she co-designed and launched ARC's first Women and Non-Binary Services Department to better serve the needs of 1,300 plus formerly incarcerated members, as well as 50 plus incarcerated women through inside programming at the California Institution for Women in Corona. Norma was appointed to the Board of State and Community Corrections by Governor Newsom. As a woman who was formerly incarcerated, Norma has firsthand experience of the many challenges of reentry, making her a compassionate and fierce activist for women and non-binary folks learning to navigate the free world after coming home from prison. And I want to add one thing. In terms of being appointed to the Board of State and Community Corrections, isn't it true that you were the first person who was formerly incarcerated to be on that board?
Yes. For sure. That is for sure.
And isn't it the first person of color too? Am I right about that?
There's other folks. I'm not sure about the history of it, but I am the first formerly incarcerated woman of color on the board.
Wow. And the first formerly incarcerated person.
Yeah, I'm just the first formerly incarcerated person. That's very apparent if you look at that. Yeah.
We've had a previous guest from inside a women's prison describe how them transferring people who identify as trans into their particular institution has created a lot of adverse reactions, a lot of past trauma is activated, and certain events have occurred while incarcerated, according to her. And I wonder if you could kind of give us your own thoughts about this, if you have heard anything, or you could kind of explain to our listeners what the situation is.
Right. So I have been back inside the prisons, the women's prisons, at this time. I've been in CCWF 3 times and CIW 2, sort of post-COVID. I don't know if we're ever going to be post-COVID, but I've been in recently. And so all of my information is from the women who attend our groups. And the information that we have is that there are people in the men's prisons who, the way that the bill is written, it doesn't give any guidelines. It's how someone self-identifies. So there are quite a few men who've come from the men's prisons who are saying that they're transgender. And once they get to the women's prisons, it turns into something else. They're not taking their medication. They do not appear as women. They are saying things to the women like they're running things now. They're men. They're here to have sex. What? Pretty much like that. And so the women are very uncomfortable with this because the main thing, I think, is that women's voices oftentimes in this space are not heard. There are fewer women incarcerated. The men have 32 prisons, maybe 31 prisons now. That's a lot of men. The women, we have 2. We used to have 3. Now we have 2.5. And so because of that, when you're incarcerated, oftentimes we are treated like small men. And it's been like a kind of an ongoing joke that we're treated like this. We're expected to wear the same clothes as men, but in smaller sizes. And we're suspect under the same laws and guidelines of a male's prison, but we're not. We're women. And so when this bill first became a thought, Senator Wiener's office went to CIW and CCWF and talked to the women, and the women voiced their concerns. They said exactly what is happening now. They said they were afraid that this would happen. And it is not anti-trans. It's not about trans women. It is about men who are taking advantage and coming to the women's prisons. And the women felt or were told that there would be guidelines in place, a system in place so that this wouldn't happen. And at CIW, they were told there won't even be any trans women for 2 years, because that's how stringent this policy is going to be at looking, with a fine-tooth comb at every person who comes to the women's prisons. So the women felt like, okay, well, that sounds good, because as a culture inside prison, we are definitely not anti-LGBTQ or anti-trans at all. As a culture, that's just not. In fact, you're kind of popular. Actually, you know how women are. We're like, well, I would like to hear your story. I would like to talk to you. Yours is different from mine. Please tell me everything. So the fact that the transfer started happening almost immediately tells its own story about that is not true, that it's stringent. It's a stringent policy, that they're looking at it with a microscope. That's not true, because then it wouldn't have happened so quickly. So I don't know. I know that sometimes when people start talking about this issue, the women are very passionate. And there's also this, when you've been incarcerated for a long time, you don't have the language. you don't have the correct language to use. So some things might come out, as like, saying things like those people or things like that. I don't know what your other guest said, but I know that I've heard things too. And I've had to speak up and let some of the women know that me personally, and then speaking as part of ARC, but also me personally, I am not anti-trans. I love my trans folks. All the LGBTQ, everybody, people in our membership, just people personally, love, love, love. But that's out here where you're not in a dehumanizing prison setting where you have no power and you're locked in, where there's strip searches at the drop of a hat. The way also that this bill is written, the people who are identifying have more rights than women. And when I say that, it's written in this bill that they can say, so you come from the men's prison, now you can say if you want a bed move because you're uncomfortable, but yet the women are not given that same regard. And so as you can guess, if you have one group of people that have certain rights and another group of people that have less rights, that is just another instance of the dehumanization of our prison system. And for me, it's as usual, women are getting the brunt end of this because we are short, we are smaller, there are less of us, and the men who are making these rules do not understand our culture and what it is to be a woman in prison.
Yeah, a couple thoughts come to my mind from what you were speaking about. First of all, I come from men's prisons, and trans persons are definitely not treated in as high as regard as you mentioned in women's prisons. So it's a whole different sort of situation. And I even heard men joke about when they heard about, oh, we could transfer to women's prison. I'm gonna pretend, obviously, if somebody's doing a life in prison or, a long stretch in prison, any sort of chance to be able to be around women, they may avail themselves of it. But I also find it kind of hard, right? Because somebody's identity, that's subjective. So how do you create objective rules to govern somebody's self-identification? And if somebody chooses not to take a medication a particular day or at all, or if somebody feels that they are not subjected to binary choices of when they can feel attraction to a particular sex, how do you regulate that? And not only that, how do you allow a dehumanizing state agency, the correctional institution, to do that? Because anytime you give them more like regulatory power, they tend to abuse that. So I feel like it's kind of a catch-22, or just you're caught between a rock and a hard place, because being a trans person, obviously that is a lot to contend with while incarcerated, because you're already dehumanized, and now you're dealing with that. Getting your identity validated or being in particular circumstances where you're not further dehumanized. But at the same time, you're speaking about women in their particular situation who's faced trauma at the hands of men in many instances. And so how do you balance in that? And how do you create a law that kind of works to provide the sort of freedoms and rights across the board, and doesn't do so in a way that dehumanizes another person or oppresses another person or victimizes another person in this equation?
Right, because that is what's happening. To hold one person up, we shouldn't have to disrespect another culture. And I believe that the solution would be some kind of maybe a separate yard. So let me say this. I've spoken to some of the trans women, and some of the things that they've suffered in the men's prisons is horrible. They are afraid to take showers. They're afraid to be in any state of undress because they're vulnerable. And I don't think that that's fair for them either. And it upsets me to think about them being treated like that. So how to keep them safe? I think that there might be a transitional period, maybe house trans women in a separate yard, like have D yard on Chowchilla. So that's a women's prison, but only on D yard, and then live there for perhaps a year, and then come over to C yard or wherever. So I will say this, there's already been a couple of I want to call them the fakers that have gone back to the men's prison. So if maybe that's something, like if they could be on a different yard so that they're safe, that's safe. You're at the women's prison, but you're at a different yard. And then maybe it's like, I hate to use the prison administration lingo, but like a step down to then maybe go into the other yard after a probationary period or after a period of time. But to just bring people there straight from the men's prison onto D Yard in Chowchilla is very scary, because the culture in men's prison is so different from the culture in women's prisons.
Totally. I hear you. And it does make perfect sense to do that sort of transitionary phase. I'm also reticent to put somebody on a yard too, kind of like that separate but equal, because also I do know in the men's prisons, trans persons were put on separate yards at a certain point in time, kept away from the general population. So I'm just wondering, how does that make, a trans person feel? And also I'm wondering as well, since you are an advocate, are women's voice on this issue? Because you kind of mentioned like they were voicing their concerns prior to the bill going into effect, or legislation going into effect. So how much are women's concerns being put into effect? So how the majority of women, I don't know if that could actually be quantified, but said like, you know what, no, we don't feel comfortable this way, or we feel comfortable like this. Like, how much are they considered as a stakeholder, a true stakeholder, as opposed to just an advocate or just somebody from the administration saying, this is what we generally think, and this is what they should be able to live with or deal with? I wonder how much their voice matters in this.
That's the problem, is that they were asked, and then when they didn't side with everything that this bill said, they were labeled anti-trans. Then that stopped the conversation, because the women said to me, like, I don't want to be labeled anti-trans. I don't want anyone to think that I'm against LGBT. What? Like, so they kind of didn't like that. And so they were quiet. And then one of the women said to me, you know why? And this really broke my heart. She said, do you know why we didn't make such a big deal about it at the time when they came to ask us? Is because we didn't think they would do this. We didn't protest harder because we didn't think they would do this to us.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they said.
That resonates. And this kind of just to piggyback off your point too about language, right? Yeah, people are inside are not politically correct, are not attuned to how to be inclusive. I remember somebody call it, if you call somebody an inmate in a men's prison, they'll be like, I'm not an inmate, I'm a convict. And now, like with pride, like, I'm a convict. You better, get at me respectfully. But now we kind of like, out here in the free world or the outside, like we call it on the streets, we look at it. No, it's person-centered language, right? It's a person who was formerly incarcerated, or a returning community member, right, as opposed to these other form of language. So I definitely could understand how people use particular language, not acclimated to what right. society is now or society is coming to be, are sounding to people outside as totally like transphobic or anti-trans or whatever other group you want to be talking about.
Yeah, you have to understand whatever she said, when she's talking about this person, it's not a trans person like you and I think. This is somebody who just came right off the men's yard. He looks like a man, is not taking any kind of hormones, is walking around the yard, trying to push other people around, saying that he's there. He wants to have sex. Like, that's the person she's talking about, not a real trans woman who is like somebody in our membership or one of my friends or anyone like that. So that's where the difference is. And so when I was at CCWF, I encouraged the women to speak their truth in a respectful way, as respectful as you can. And as you know, that sometimes we're very blunt in prison and we don't have that little, polite bubble. Like, it's so funny because I think about it like out here, people don't say stuff like, you look tired. Like, what's wrong with you? Get that frown off your face. Like, people don't talk like that out here, like in there all the time. Like, I go in there, they're like, oh, girl, you look bad today. I'm like, oh, I've missed you guys.
Well, wait, Norma, you know what that reminds me of? When you said to me that you were direct with someone at work, and then someone's like, you've got a code switch. And then you put a sticky on your computer to say code switch so that you're not as direct with someone who was never inside.
Yes, I do. I have a sticker on my computer at the office that says code switch because I start hanging out with my folks, all the formerly incarcerated people, and we start, ha ha ha, and being real blunt, looking around, talking the way that we do. And he knows. And all of a sudden somebody else walks up and you're like, rah, 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 and then their feelings are hurt. And you got to back up a little bit. So it's definitely a culture clash. And I also know about the inmate thing. When I go in there and they start referring to themselves as inmates, I cringe. I go, oh my God, you guys. Oh my God, this is so awkward. Like, stop doing that. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? And so it's different. It's definitely not, exactly what you said, not politically correct at all. And so that's another piece that when this bill became a thought, I think we could have sat down at a table together, everybody, and listened to each other and listened to the women speak about how this could possibly, based on the culture of this dehumanizing system that's prison, how people could take advantage of this, then I think this would not have happened the way that it did. And so that part. That's
a huge part. I hear a lot of folks who go back in for their work, and that it's both. It's healing, right? Because maybe you're going in to help, your friends inside, and it could be sort of reactivating. And so I'm wondering, what has it been like for you? I knew you when you first came home, and now it's 10 years later, you're doing all this amazing activism. What is it like for you to go back in, and how would you sort of describe your own healing?
Well, I feel I'm still continuously healing. I'm still in the process of healing. It's some days it's really tough for me. Other days it's not as sometimes. So there's this stuff. It's email. You can communicate, with email, or I can get letters at the office. And sometimes I can't answer. I just, especially during COVID, when things were so dark and there's no answer. There's nothing that we could do, really. The prisons were pretty much closed to us. I would just take a break and really have to be in a good space. Sometimes I would do it Sunday mornings. I would have this restful time, give myself the space, self-talk, tell myself it's okay that you took a week to respond. It's okay. But, give yourself that space and a nice quiet time to answer. So some days, and especially with this, there's another thing, since we're going to blast out, the women's prisons here. Something else happened that was also equally as devastating to me is there's body cams now at CIW. So all the officers are required to wear body cams. And we got a call at the office that the officers are not turning their body cams off during strip searches. And so that has also been devastating to me to think about my people going through that, to be in such a vulnerable, humiliating state, and to turn around and see a red light pointed at you because they're recording is just, I even feel upset for the officers that are being required to do that. So we have sent a letter to CDCR requesting a conversation about this. We're going to continue to have conversations about this until that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that, but I could imagine how re-traumatizing that could be for so many people there. And I know that the authority that correctional officers have, that power over one's life, when you don't have any, you can't make any choices by yourself. Pretty much, you're allowed the choices that they allow you to have, and for them to utilize that in even more oppressive manner that really re-traumatizes that. I could imagine how that could be absolutely devastating to the women inside. I'm wondering, because obviously you've come out of jail and you became this activist. What does it mean to address trauma through activism?
When I first came home, I didn't think that this was going to be my road. I always thought when I was inside that, I don't know why I had this weird little, I don't know if this is a woman thing or if you think this, if you guys thought this too, but I always like pictured this, like I was going to find a mom and pop store and I was going to quietly, I don't know what I pictured myself like in the Swiss Alps or something. Like I was going to be like baking bread with an apron on and like, like doing this, like work, this like small family, like possibly that could be something that I would do. I never thought when I came home that I would be where I am today. And I continuously tell people when they first come home, you're going to be a completely different person in a year. So, but my activism really started when at my first job, when I first came home, I worked at a place called the Center for Restorative Justice Works. It was founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. So nuns, my nunny bunnies. And I worked at an umbrella. Under that umbrella was an organization called Get on the Bus. And so I worked as a coordinator for Get on the Bus. So I had never met any of the men, but I met their children before I met the men. And so, in women's prison, we're like, oh, these men, we always thought you guys got all the best stuff. You guys were just getting the best packages. You had the best visits. You guys had like sirloin steak and, macaroni and cheese and stuff. And we didn't have anything and it's so funny because the men thought the same thing about us. Now that
I was jealous of the women. We were all jealous of the women. Look at the stuff they get. We can't get this stuff.
So I always had like this kind of like, oh, these men, and then I met these children. And so that really started, I guess what you would call activism, is to meet these children who were worried about their dads. And they would ask me, questions, because I would tell them who I was. I'm formerly incarcerated. I was a lifer like your dad. I just came home, a year ago. I don't know what I'm doing. I still can't use a bank card. I don't know how to call a Lyft. I don't even know what that is. And the kids would ask me questions and I would answer them as honestly as I can and tell them that their dads were missing them and that their dads wrote them letters because they tried to be the best dads they could be. And so that started a little bit, that kind of opened my eye a little bit, like, wow, maybe I could bring some good into this world if I use my experience of what I went through to support a child who has a parent incarcerated. And I was at that job for about 5 years doing that and being what you would call an activist with my nunny bunnies and the children.
I love the nunny bunnies.
Nunny bunnies.
And you were like, I remember, weren't you going from like Claremont to LA? Like, I remember you had like a huge schlep.
Yeah, I would go. So I would get up at 4:30 in the morning and walk down to the Metro Link. But let me tell you, it wasn't a normal walk because I had to look cute because I was in tennis shoes for 18 years. So I would have my little wedgies on, clink, 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 down to the Metro Link. And then I would take this Metro Link and then get the red line. So I saw like all kinds of people, all kinds of things. It was amazing. I loved it. And I commuted an hour and a half each way. And then my job, I was getting about $10 an hour. And it was a part-time little gig at first. And I just kept on and kept on. And the thing is, when I talk to people about it, I say that the thing about being in prison for so long is you are able, or at least most of the people that I know, were able to really get along with all kinds of different people. And so I was at this little nonprofit and I got along with everybody. I was like, I'm still friends with them to this day. And so I just sort of moved up. There was an opportunity. Will you do this? Well, damn, I was already commuting an hour and a half. Like I could do, after that, I could do anything. I was like, I know how to ride a Metro Link. I can do anything. And so I just sort of moved up. I took those opportunities that maybe other people didn't really want, but I was happy to do it. And so I was grateful to be where I was. I was grateful that I had a job where I could support children. I was just grateful 100%. I took those opportunities and ran with them.
Well, yeah, $10 an hour is actually, a lot compared to like 11 cents an hour, right?
Yeah. 14 cents an hour. I was like, wow, $10, a whole $10 an hour? Jeez. And I got breaks. What?
No, I definitely hear you. And I'm actually familiar with the Get on the Bus. I helped run like on the administrative end when I worked in the chapel. They ran the Get on the Bus program, and that was always exciting experience to see the kids, because we seen the pictures. We see all the pictures. We used to hang them up in the office, and it was awesome to bring children together with their parents and the stuff they did. Right, they might have like a face painting or some other stuff. And for a lot of men there, they didn't have another opportunity to see their children or whatnot. Like, they made it really happen to get on the bus. So it was really a powerful thing, and it touched families. And it's really, I think it goes a large part to healing. Is kind of what we're talking about here. So I'm wondering, though, when we're talking about like family healing, community healing, how do you see community healing as political?
So I think just like exactly what you were saying, like supporting each other in our community will be political, especially now that there are so many of us. So at the beginning, when I first came home, there weren't that many. There weren't that many lifers coming home. There weren't people with long sentences coming home. And now, through a change in our state, our governor has changed, the political landscape has changed here. It's brought a lot of our people home. And we are the ones that can best support each other coming home, because we know what that feels like. We know how much we want to give back and how sorry we are for what happened in our lives. And we are the ones that can support each other. And as far as being political, I think the passage of ACA 6 last year oh my God, there's ACA 3 now, there was ACA 6, the passage. So what that is, okay, delete if that's the wrong one, is that it gave the power to people who are on parole to vote. And I think that is a tremendous win for our community of formerly incarcerated, our allies, our advocates. I think it sends a message that we matter, that we are a force here, that those of us who went to prison, we made a mistake, we understand the ramifications of that. We want to be better people, that we no longer, hopefully soon, will no longer have to feel so much shame about being a formerly incarcerated person. When I first came home, I was so worried. I mean, I remember asking Susie, like, oh, people are going to find out about me. Like, how am I going to date anybody? How am I going to be friends? Like, I like this lady at the gym. We go to the same classes, but she doesn't know about me. It was such a boulder for me. And this passage of this bill and other bills like it, if you want to, call it political, or if you want to call it, a supportive state that we're in California, however you want to call it, it's us banding together, people who care about those of us that were incarcerated.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I like how you mentioned a supportive group or supportive state. Is that how you term? Yeah.
We're in a supportive state.
I like that. Okay. And you've been doing a great work with ARC, and now I hear about you have a new podcast. So can you tell us about the new podcast at ARC that you are hosting?
Yeah, I'm so curious too.
Okay, so all the people listening, subscribe and write a review if you like what you hear. We are called Free World. And we got that name because obviously we're living in the free world, but we always have in the office, we're always talking about little funny things about, oh, that's some free world problems, like looking in your fridge and just trying to figure out which yogurt or even have an expired yogurt. Oh my gosh, that's a free world problem, right? So all of our free world problems, we always joke around about that, or I'll say, that's some free world shit right there. If something's like super like exciting, like, oh, we get to, drink at the ball or wherever. I'm like, what? That is some free world shit. This is living large up in here. We're like eating hot dogs and drinking sodas, whatever. So that's what we named it after. But the most exciting thing about Free World is it's hosted by myself and my co-host, Sean Robinson. And she had a name change. So we are both formerly incarcerated women. We're both former lifers, but on our team, is also, our producers are also formerly incarcerated women. So it's Rose Brown and Alyssa Gallo, and they are part of our Free World team. And Alexia Sina, we're all formerly incarcerated women just trying to do the damn thing.
I love this. So is the focus formerly incarcerated women? I mean, is that who the guests will be?
Yes. So for right now, only interviewing formerly incarcerated women. But I don't know about next season. You'll have to subscribe to see what's happening. But our last podcast, we interviewed Representative Tara Simmons. She is the first formerly incarcerated woman to be elected for public office in the state of Washington.
Wow.
She's amazing. We love her. Yes, we're like her. Well, I'm definitely her groupie. I'm like I'm friends with her office now, like her legislative aides. I'm like, hey, dude, because I have been hounding them for so long about getting her on our podcast. We get a quote from her for the newsletter? Can we get that? Like anything that there's a need for, I'm running to her office because she's amazing. And she talks about how she said, well, I like the name of it is, but if I win, what would it do for our people?
I love that.
That's when she ran for office and she won.
Has it dropped yet?
Yes. Just yesterday or 2 days or something.
Oh, whatever day it was, we'll share. Because after your episode, which is going to be October 14th, my birthday, and it's DV Awareness Month as well, we will share like all of the resources you want us to share, including your podcast.
Perfect.
That's a badass.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even know you can get elected with a criminal background. So this is very much informative for me.
Oh, are we thinking of running now?
Run!
I mean, I might set my eyes on the presidency now. It's like, I don't
Yehuda,
do it.
You heard it first here, listeners.
Yes, that's right. It's a historic podcast right now. They're going to be playing this over and over again when you win.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This thread will never die. Just know. Yeah. So, Norma, what action steps can listeners begin to take if they want to get involved with ARC or support any of the efforts that you're on?
They can subscribe to our newsletter at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition and like and follow our Free World podcast, and also join us on Instagram, Free World.
We'll make sure to get that information out there too in our newsletter. And I want to know, it's been awesome having you here, hearing your perspective. I have heard a lot of perspectives particularly from men in jail, but coming from the woman's perspective, especially tied to all the activism that you do in the advocacy work. Now, I want to know, what has it been like to tell your story here today?
Well, of course, I love Susie because that's my friend. That's my girl. And I loved being here with you also, Miss, I don't even know what to call you anymore. If I should call you representative or if I should call you governor, like, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? I don't know. So
I'm humble. You can just call me Yehuda for right now.
Yehuda, sir. So, I mean, it's been really cool meeting you because I've heard a lot about you, and that's been amazing. It's been awesome. I am finding myself in more and more spaces where I have to speak up for the women inside. I don't know if you ever feel like this, but sometimes I say, like, I just want to be a regular person. Like, I just want to be like a normal person. Like, I don't know. It shouldn't be me. Like, I'm not the best speaker. I don't know. But just more and more as I go on my travels, I find that I just say a little prayer. I do a little positive self-talk, and then I speak what's in my heart. And I love my folks inside, and I love my folks coming home. And if I'm being called to, I'm going to have to speak up. It's felt great being here with you all today and being around such amazing friends, period.
I love you, Norma. I love your heartbeat. I love who you are. I mean, going back 10 years ago, I was like, I just want to hang out and be friends. And I'm just so happy that 10 years later, that's exactly who we are. And I trust you more than anyone. And you know what you said? You said something earlier that, like, we notice everything because we've been inside. We observe everything. We feel everything. We see everything. And I think you are the most honest friend that I have, because I love that you don't code switch and that you'll say it like it is. And yeah, I see you, I hear you, and I just appreciate who you are.
We'd like to thank our listeners, and special thanks to Arts in Action, part of USC Visions and Voices, the Arts and Humanities Initiative, for their generous support. Arts in Action, part of USC Visions and Voices, plants seeds for positive social change by activating intensive art projects between community partners, students, and faculty. Today's episode is written and produced by Susie Hess and Yehuda Price. Today's music is co-written and produced by Yehuda Price, utilizing a contraband cell phone while in prison. Our Stories Matter is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Our Stories Matter, and our website at traumainformedla.org. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.
Life is the life we live. Modern day slavery pursuing cheddar. Life is the life we live. Whips and chains trying to duck the 12th letter.
Mamas tell us be good, obey mass, so don't be like daddy all in the hood, okay, bastard.